hey, I may look, I may look a little different. There are two reasons for that. One, I figured my strategy for going up against Gwyn just wasn't good. I needed to change up the strategy. And because Gwyn, for how slow this game is, and for how slow medium roll is, Gwyn was just too fast for the strategy I was trying to employ. So what I decided to do was think about how to speed up against a Gwyn. And there were three main things that I came up with. Idea number one was to use the Black Shield Knight, because it has 100% physical reduction and 95% fire reduction. And to use that to block most attacks, and to go on a light load, and to try to roll through some attacks. Idea number two was to parry him, which I've actually been practicing parrying against the Black Knights coming down here, and I've gotten decent at it, but Gwyn is a different story. I haven't tried against him, but I don't imagine it'd go too well. And the third concept, which is what I did, was go with the Black Iron Great Shield, because while it has less fire reduction, it's only by 5%. Whereas at plus 14, I can't get it to plus 15 because I don't have any Titanite slabs. It has 9 more stability. So I'm losing 5% fire defense for 9 stability. And I'm using the Gold Hem set, which has very high fire defense, even higher than the plus 5 Silver Knight armor. So very good fire defense mixed with 90% fire reduction while shielding. And yeah, this doesn't have very good physical defense, but 100% physical defense, which means in theory, as long as I shield all of his attacks, I should be taking very little to no damage. But then the issue there would be stamina. Well, 83 stability to get as high of a stability as we can, along with Mask the Child, which Mask of the Child slightly raises stamina recovery speed, along with the Chloranthy Ring, which together almost doubles your stamina recovery or your stamina regen. Meaning, as long as you can go between shielding and not shielding fairly effectively, you can basically go through the fight losing almost no health and keeping your stamina up. Now, right before recording, I muted myself to go do something, and came back and forgot to unmute myself like an idiot. So I still have that recording, just I didn't talk during it because I was muted. So I decided to employ the same strategy, just unmuting myself this time, with my other character, with the experimental. The only problem is that I had 33 points into dexterity. In order to wield this, you need 34 points into strength, which created a bit of a problem, because I don't know how to respec in this game, if you can at all. So I was, I believe, level 92 on the main character when I did this, whereas here I'm level 100, and even at level 100 I have less vitality and less endurance. But it's the same rings and armor and shield. Weapons different, but worth giving it a go, I think. The hardest part about this is just finding when to heal. Because while you take very little to no damage, you do occasionally get hit by an attack that you couldn't shield, either because you were already in an animation, or because you had your shield down to try to regain stamina, or whatever the reason may be. But what I found was his grab attack, you can walk around. And just continuously walking around him, he likes to do that grab attack a lot. And it's pretty easy to punish, actually. Surprisingly. And there we go. First try. Soul of Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. Victory achieved. And 70,000. It was actually a lot easier this time. Wow. I made a lot less mistakes. But we can watch this, and then I can play you the original, like on my main character, where a lot more mistakes were had. But I did it with the greatsword, because I did contemplate moving to a faster weapon that took less stamina because of how fast Gwyn is. But I decided against that because this was a single weapon class run. And I thought, doing a single weapon class run and then moving to a different weapon class at the very end, at the very final boss, it would just betray that. And so that's part of why I do these single weapon class runs, to really find out the strengths and weaknesses of every single weapon class, and facing, like, just hitting a brick wall because of those weaknesses, and then finding strategies around that to overcome that difficulty. But anyways, we can link the fire, and then once that's done, we can play the original. before going into the future, I just want to talk about how after beating, well, honestly, two with the Great Sword and the Straight Sword runs, how I feel about Dark Souls. And then once I get done beating the game as, or with most, if not all, the different weapon classes, just see how that changes over time. So for now, having beaten two, I feel the game is decent. It definitely has some problems, like with feeling a bit clunky, with a lot of the hitboxes being weird and there being some janky stuff. But there's also a lot that's really good about it. The weapons feel really nice. Honestly, uh, seeing like different weapons have different move sets, which I haven't looked at that a lot, but with the claymore heavy being a poke attack, whereas the bastard sword is more of an overhead slam. That's very nice. That's something that most games you don't really see a lot of, and so it's very nice. And then obviously the world design, how you, after the tutorial, you start off in Firelink, and from Firelink you can go to the Undead Burg, and that later attaches back to the depths, and then that also connects back to the Undead Parish and New Londo Ruins and Blight Town and the Catacombs, and you can go back to the Undead Asylum. There are just so many different areas that connect so seamlessly back to Firelink. I remember when I first got the elevator in the Undead Parish back to Firelink, it was really surprising because I thought I was miles away from Firelink. But looking back, it totally makes sense. And it feels very smooth. It feels very intuitive to go through the world now. And just to go from one place to another. And while not recording, I went out of my way to get stuff that was pretty far away, or to do things in a purposely less efficient manner, simply to travel the world more. Because it felt so good to just explore the world, to move from place to place. And I think they added the Lord Vessel to allow you to teleport at the perfect time. Just when you're getting used to that and some of the wonder starts to wear off. And also you can't go back from Anor Londo, but like it gives you it at just the perfect time. But also you can't teleport to every bonfire. You can only teleport to a handful, like 10 or so. Like typically like one of each area, which I think that's nice. I think that's good. It's a restriction that doesn't feel super artificial, and it still gets you where you need to go, while still somewhat encouraging exploration and going on foot. My only tiny problem with that would be, well, two tiny problems with that would be the one in Blighttown being behind an illusory wall, which can really mess with new players. And then there only being one for the entirety of Blighttown Demon Ruins and Lost Izalith, which that's largely mediated by there being an elevator right there. But that's 1 for 3 areas, whereas in Orlando has 3 for 1 area. But that's just a tiny, tiny, tiny little nitpick. Not a big deal at all. And it's easily overlooked. But my biggest problem with the game is just that it feels like slow and cumbersome and janky. And that's in large part because of 2 things. 1, the hitboxes, and 2, the medium roll. And I mean, like, just discovered light roll. So I wonder how going forward light roll is going to change my opinion on that. But at least for right now, right this second, this moment in time, it does kind of suck a little bit because I'm so used to medium roll being like the normal fast thing in the later games. And so maybe this is good, maybe this is something I'll come to appreciate and enjoy over time because it makes light roll actually useful, whereas in the later games I look at light roll and just go, that's just medium roll but less defensive. So there's no point to light roll, at least in my mind, in the later games. Whereas here it's actually useful. But that's something that we'll have to see how my opinion changes over time. But it's been enjoyable. Still a little salty about not having the Healy ring. I haven't forgotten about that. I will never forget about that. I will never let what's their face live it down. Guinevere, I think their name is. I'm never gonna let that live. Never letting them live that down. Even though that's probably Dark Souls 3's fault for giving me such high expectations. But still, I'm gonna blame it not being a Healy ring here because I'm mean. But then the other thing would be not being able to roll diagonally, which maybe that's something I'm going to come to appreciate more over time. Because a big part of my problem with it now is that I'm not used to it not being a function. I'm used to being able to roll diagonally. And so not being able to do it here really, really throws me off. So maybe that's something I'm going to change my mind on over time. Who knows? We'll have to see. But I do think, just like the other games, I aspire to beat the game with every single weapon class. And I think what I'm going to do is have a few of them be in New Game Plus, just to mix it up a bit, and also because those would probably be the ones that have like the highest requirement stat-wise to even get started on. Or you get that weapon class the latest in the game. But pretty enjoyable so far. And yeah,